Before farming was introduced to Scotland, people lived by hunting, fishing, and gathering wild foodstuffs. This way of life meant that they usually didn't settle permanently in one place, but were to an extent nomadic, moving about in search of a livelihood, perhaps returning to the same place at certain times of the year. It is believed that the islands of Orkney were known to these people, but, so far, only a few flint stools have been found to verify this. This is because coastal erosion has destroyed many ancient sites, and these may have contained relics of some of these earliest pioneering colonists. The notion of establishing an international coalition to fight starvation was proposed by President Johannes of Germany on World Food Day in 2001. He proposed forming an international coalition to solve political and other problems that obstruct raising enough funds to fight starvation and poverty. The proposal received the support from a large number of people. 5 years later, in the World Grain Summit Conference, attendants decided to attend the Manifesto to International Eradicate Starvation Coalition. Many people hope the coalition can be supported, so that a resolution will be forged and plans made to eliminate starvation and poverty. In 2002, during the Development Fundraising Conference held in Monterrey, Mexico, the Grain and Agricultural Organization, International Agricultural Development Fund, and World Grain Plan Department made a joint appeal for poverty elimination. They also expressed dissatisfaction that governments and development partners didn't turn their promise into a detailed action plan, so there is much to be desired. At the Monterrey Conference, many countries promised to increase official development aid. European coalition countries agreed to raise the official development aid to 0.39% of the state income from 2006. Modern wealth has been created mainly through the action of market forces, which now dominate the whole of the industrial world. It is based on the false premise that we all start at an equal point. Of course, nobody starts the same point. Market forces help a few to become very wealthy at the expense of the many who become poorer. This is taking place all over the world. There is an increasing number of hungry and desperate people living in utter poverty. Yet, there are millionaires of all nationalities throughout the developed world. Market forces are inevitably acting to divide our world because they separate one section of society from another. Strangely enough, to create a society based on the free play of market forces, there must be a very strict control over the economy to ensure business efficiency. This is the poison of commercialization. It imposes restrictions on the natural needs of society. When the politicians are not meeting the needs of society, the people revolt. When the people's voice is not heard, there will inevitably be a revolution. Part of that revolution is the growing crime rate and the violent street protests, which are the result of the imbalance of our society. Too great wealth side by side with too great poverty. Paper was first manufactured in Europe by the Spanish in the 12th century. Although it had been imported since the 10th century, around the year 1276, a mill was established at Fabriano in Italy. The town became a major counter for paper making and throughout the 14th century provided most of Europe with fine quality paper, which it has continued to produce ever since. By the 15th century, paper was also being manufactured in Germany and France, and it was not long before both countries became almost completely independent of material bought overseas. With the increasing availability of paper in Europe, the production identical printed pictures became almost inevitable. The spinal cord, the link between the brain and the body, is a band of nervous tissue about the thickness of your little finger that runs through the backbone. Nerve cells called motor neurons convey electric impulses that travel from the brain to the spinal cord, branching off at the appropriate point and passing to the various parts of the body. Similarly, sensory neurons transmit messages from organs and tissues via the spinal cord to the brain, but the spinal cord also functions without the brain having to intervene. It alone controls those actions called spinal reflexes that need to be carried out very fast in response to danger.
And as far as getting acquired, we're trying to focus on the product. I think that if a lot of companies are built to be acquired, and I think what happens there is you leave yourself in a really vulnerable spot because you're growing and you say, hey, I won't hire that expensive VP of whatever because, hey, man, any day now we're going to get acquired. And then your product winds up suffering. So I think you need to really want to do the company because you don't know how long you're going to be at it. And luckily I've been searched a long time. I don't want to stay in search. So it's fine with me whatever happens with the company. But you have to focus on building the product to making the product better. And you have to focus on building a sustainable company.
Well, basically just hitchhiking on the point. If you look at the customers of the Wall Street Journal, the basically financial news, financial people here are people who rely on sound, valid, and timely data to make investment decisions. They look at things and track trends in the industry, worrying about things like profit maximization. If they even suspected that political issues or ideological issues from the editorial page were going to start affecting the flow of valid financial information, if they even thought that ideological issues were going to affect their ability to understand investments and make sound decisions, they'd get very upset.
Most likely, a Mars mission will require transporting most of the necessary supplies and equipment by unmanned spacecraft to the chosen landing area and confirming their operable condition before the first astronauts even arrive. During their long confined stay, the Mars pioneers may live in an inflatable modular housing unit as a possible replacement for the U.S. crew quarters on the International Space Station. The cylindrical structure would be 27 feet in diameter and have a foot-thick competitive shell when inflated. The shell would be made of almost 24 layers of material that is stronger than steel. It would also provide insulation from the extreme Martian temperature that range from 128.3 Celsius during the polar night to 26.6 Celsius at the equator. The module would consist of 4 levels: for work, healthcare, crew, quarters, and a galley area. There are few among us that did not wonder in awe about what it would be like to be an astronaut. Space exploration will forever pique humanity's interest and curiosity. The prestige of visiting outer space belongs to a proud few, but as technology develops, more and more people will have the opportunity. The Federation Aeronautique International states that a man or woman officially becomes an astronaut upon reaching an altitude of over 100 miles. As of March 30, 2006, 443 people have crossed this imaginary line. Efforts to learn more about space are widespread. Since the astronaut Yuri Gagarin made his pioneering exit out of our atmosphere, men and women from 35 countries have joined this notoriety. During the race to space in the early 1960s, the United States began Project Apollo, a campaign launch to compete with the efforts of Russian scientists and future cosmonauts. With resources going into the Apollo spacecraft, Saturn launch vehicle, and details like mission-specific astronaut suits, the U.S. was finally successful when the Apollo astronauts reached the moon and safely returned in July of 1969. Since the infancy of human presence in space, 18 astronauts have died on missions and 10 more from launches. Despite this, our interests remain strong and our minds stay determined. Find out more about astronauts and space-related news in our archive of astronaut pictures, articles, and interactive features below.
You've heard about SARS, AIDS, and bird flu. Now, researchers from Australia claim we're about to be hit by a new epidemic, motivational deficiency disorder. According to the British Medical Journal, 1 in 5 people are said to suffer from motivational deficiency disorder, or MODED, and most don't even know they have it. Symptoms include being unable to get out of bed in the morning, being trapped on the couch,